Hello there. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take an MX500 and upgrade it from a 500 watt 36 volt system to a 1000 watt 48 volt system. This is an awesome project, and it's a way to take the full suspension that the MX500 provides and add a little extra oomph to it. Hope you enjoyed the video. So let's start off with the parts list. You see, first on the list here is the Cobalt battery and charger kit. I have one here that I found for about 125 bucks. Of course, there is also a knockoff version that you can get for $87, so you can save a substantial amount of money here. The key is here to use, or to get 2 Cobalt batteries at least, because I'm actually going to run 2 batteries in series, and each of these Cobalt batteries is 24 volts. So if you run them in series, 24 plus 24 is 48. That's going to get us up to the 48 volts that we're going to need. As it turns out, I actually already have Cobalt batteries for my power tools, and so I didn't even need to purchase this line. But if this is your first project using Cobalt and you don't have existing batteries, you will have to purchase those. Second on the list here is the motor upgrade kit. Got one here for 210 bucks. This includes everything you need, including some extras. And it seemed like a pretty solid kit, and it worked for me. The key is here, if you are going to buy a motor, make sure it's the proper length, because I did purchase one and I had to return it. It was a little bit too long, so you're looking for a motor that's like 5¼ inches long, because that's the length of the original MX500 motor. And it's a little hard to find motors that are 1000 watts and up that are only that length. Next up is this battery adapter. I found this 2-pack here. That's going to be perfect because 2 batteries, 2 battery adapters is what we're going to need. But these are going to allow us to actually attach the power tool batteries right to the dirt bike. So between these items here, if you don't have the batteries and you have to purchase them, you're looking at a little over 350 bucks all in. Or if, like me, you already have the batteries, you're looking at about 230 bucks all in on this project. Of course, not including the cost of the dirt bike. Of course, you need to find an MX500 dirt bike. You may have one kicking around. You can find them on Facebook Marketplace, and that's where I found this one. These ones are actually pretty popular for like a project bike, and so they're a little tricky to find. But given that Razor's been making these for a while, you have a bunch that are getting a little older, and so the old lead acid batteries are dying. So you can, if you're patient, you can snatch one up. I saw this one listed for 100 bucks, and so I grabbed it right away. And when I showed up to get it, the guy told me that he had been getting a lot of messages about it. So clearly they are pretty popular. So you just got to kind of hunt Facebook Marketplace until you spot a deal, and then gobble it up as soon as you do. Let's dive into the project. Started by taking the seat off to make everything easier to work with. Once you remove the 1 screw on top and 2 screws in the back, the seat slides off easily. Next up, I removed the chain guard. As you can see here, only part of the chain guard was still here, so there's actually a second piece that wraps around the rear sprocket that this dirt bike just didn't come with, so you'd have to remove that one too. But popping it off is going to allow you to access the motor. Next up is removing the old motor. I used an Allen key to get to it here, so you can see there is 1 bolt on the side where I am here, and there's actually 2 bolts on the back, which unfortunately I didn't show clearly in the video. Also, these bolts were fairly seized up, not completely seized, but it was a little tricky to remove them, but once I got them out, the motor slid out nicely. Of course, it wasn't until I actually was starting to remove the motor that I realized the zip ties weren't going to allow me to fully take it out. So it's probably worth actually going through and cutting out all the zip ties before you start the project, because really all of these, the controller, the batteries, the motor, it's all going to go. So easier just to get rid of all the zip ties in one fell swoop, probably from the get-go. And with that, I will set the motor aside. I'm actually going to use it for another project to get it to fit into one of my MX350s. So maybe that'll be a separate video. Gonna probably soup up another dirt bike with this 500 watt motor. Next up, it's time to remove the batteries and the controller. This top battery wasn't fastened in at all when I bought the dirt bike, so it just dropped right out. Next, I'm gonna pop out the controller. It's got 2 hex bolts, so just drive those out and then undo all the different plugs that are attached to the various components, and then the 2 batteries on the bottom also have hex bolts holding down this metal strap, and so I had to undo that and then pop the batteries out, and they were plugged in, so I had to undo those. But everything came out pretty easily with the unplugging and the undoing of the bolts. So next up, removing the throttle. You can just use an Allen key for this, and then actually this rubber tip to the handle was kind of shrunken from age. I think it was really difficult to get off, so I ended up actually cutting at it a little bit and then kind of wrenching it off with a screwdriver. After that, the throttle came off, no problem. So I set aside that, the motor, and the controller for a separate project. So the motor I bought actually came with feet on it. I know a lot of motors do, and there is no place to attach the feet for the MX500, and additionally they actually get in the way. There's just not enough room to work with the tire being in the frame being where it is, and so the feet needed to be removed. So I just used this angle grinder. I didn't really have the right disc for it, so I kind of just hacked away at this thing, and once the feet were off, it was almost the right size to fit in, but these cooling fins, which I was hoping to be able to use, also made it a little bit too large, so I had to carefully slide those off. And again, I'll set them aside, maybe I can use them for another project. But with the cooling fins gone and the feet gone, the motor was the right width to be able to fit on this frame. Now the length is a different matter. You can see the new replacement motor is just actually slightly shorter than the original motor, and the shaft also is a slightly different length. It's actually a little bit longer on the new one, so I'm going to do some creative use of washers in order to space the motor just perfectly so that the sprocket is in the right spot, and so that the motor will fit snugly where it's supposed to. So also the sprocket here on the replacement motor is a different size. It's for a different chain, and so I'm actually going to remove it. And if you're doing this project, you could use the existing sprocket on the original motor, but I'm not going to do that because I'm saving this motor for a separate project. So it is also interchangeable with any of the motors for like the MX350 or the Razor Dune Buggy if you have one of those. So I had some other motors lying around. I think I ended up using the MY1016C, which came with an MX350, or you can just buy the sprocket online, which I kind of wish that I did, because this sprocket that I used wasn't quite the right size for the shaft of the motor, and so I ended up having to file it down, and for that reason it never quite ended up fitting right, and it kind of creates a little bit of a stutter when we're using it. So it's fine, it ended up working out, but I really kind of wish that I just honestly bought a new sprocket. You're going to want to buy one. If you do that, you're going to want to buy it for a number 25 chain, and it should be an 11-tooth sprocket if that's what you want, or you could do a different number of teeth and it's going to affect the top speed and acceleration of the dirt bike. So with the new sprocket mounted on the motor and a few washers in hand and the original hex bolt that was used, I am ready to mount this new one. So I'm going to use a few washers on this side, and then I'm also using washers on the back side as well. It turns out the screw holes didn't line up on the back side, and so I only actually ended up putting in one of these hex bolts, and it ended up working fine, although probably the motor's just a little bit less secure than it was before. No issues yet. Now it's time to reset the chain. Would you look at that? Now it's time to mount the battery adapters. My approach here was to figure out exactly where I wanted to put them, make sure I spaced them out enough so it'll be easy enough to put the batteries on so they won't be knocking into each other. And then there's this little metal lip here. I just ended up flattening it with a pair of pliers. Again, so it doesn't interfere at all with where I want to put these, and also having the battery click in and out just makes everything easier. Then I flipped over the frame here and used a titanium drill bit to drill right through the frame exactly where I wanted the battery adapter to be, and then that also provided the, I guess, pilot hole that went through the adapter, and then I widened the hole on the battery adapter on the top side here so that I could fit in a washer and a bolt to attach these battery adapters to the frame. So yeah, fed the bolt through with a washer, and then just used a nut on the underside to fasten it down snugly. I only used one. For other projects I've used 2 bolts, but one seems to have done the trick, and they have not loosened up yet. And with that, let's go and test out the battery adapter, make sure it works fine. So click it right in there, looks good, and then pop it out. Oh yeah. Now it's time to mount the controller. It didn't quite fit because there's this little piece of metal that protrudes in the center for stability. So I just took an angle grinder right to the center, ground out a little notch so that it would fit in here perfectly. Then I fed through some zip ties and just zip tied it right into place. Now it's time to attach the battery adapters to the controller. And so for this, strip the wires, and I'm putting on the shrink tubing. You missed it here, but I actually joined the 2 battery adapters together, so the black from one side to the red in the other. But here I am stripping the wires, and the motor kit actually came with this handy little like bolt assembly where I can bolt everything together. So I actually just stripped a little extra wire and then made these little rings, or these little U's, or these little circles, and then I ended up kind of feeding the wire back around and into itself, and then using the shrink tubing to make these little rings, so that I could just take these stripped wires and be able to attach them directly to this little bolt assembly thing. And so with those done and all shrunk up with my heat gun, I was able to attach the red wire from the battery mount directly to the red wire from the controller, and same deal with the black wire here. So black wire from the battery mount adapter to the controller, and tighten down these bolts. And then I did one last pass over with my hex screwdriver here in order to tighten everything down nicely. I'm going to spin the bike back around so that I can install the throttle. This throttle that came with the kit has a forward and reverse button, and it has a 3-speed adjuster here. So 1 bar is the lowest speed, 2 bars is the middle speed, and then the center 0 is the fastest speed. And there's 3 different plugs here. 1 for the throttle, 1 for the 3-speed, and 1 for forward and reverse. As an aside, the forward and reverse doesn't actually do anything, because when you go reverse, it spins the motor backwards, but it doesn't engage the sprocket. So I just had my assistant tell me that the throttle was in the correct position for him, as he prefers, and then I used the Allen key to tighten it down, and then I had to feed this plug through the little hole that's in the number panel on the front of the dirt bike. That's going to give me, pull everything tight enough, but not too tight. You still want to be able to move the handlebars side to side. And I'm back to this yellow connector plate so that I can attach the motor wires. So on the controller side, you'll see there's a blue, a yellow, and a green wire. So I'm going to put those in position, and then I'm going to unwind this motor wire here, and I'm going to match up all the colors. That's going to get the 3 different phases of the motor hooked up, and tighten them all down nicely here with the 3 different nuts. So again, it's pretty simple. It's just color matching. And then there's this plastic plate that can go on the top here. This actually, it is a nice way to do it. I don't know if I prefer this or the white plugs. And the other thing that's coming from the motor is this hall sensor here, which has, I think, 5 wires, but it's going to the motor's going to speak to the controller, tell it like what position it's in, since that's the function of the hall plug there. Now I'm going to hook up the throttle plugs. So it's got the 3-speed, throttle, and the forward reverse. And at this point, you just got to match up all the plugs. Usually, the colors might match or they might not. And if you are confused about it, because sometimes things don't match up, there's a different plug or the wires are different colors, you can usually go to a manual that will be included. And if there's a different plug than the one that's there, you can always just cut the wires and join them with shrink tubing or whatever strategy you want to use the wires. But the documentation is usually pretty clear in the manual. At this point, I just want to test to make sure everything's working. So I'm going to grab the key switch here, the on-off switch, and find the correct plug on the controller, and I'm just going to plug it in. And this test I'm going to do, before I zip tie everything together and put the cover back on. The rider is going to plug in the 2 batteries to run the test. Again, I'm using these Cobalt 24-volt batteries, so 2 in series equals 48 volts. And then got to flip on the key, and also I left with these battery adapters the little like on-off switch here. It's kind of nice to have 2 different systems both working, so I'm going to flip that on too. And then you can't see it here, but the driver is actually spinning the throttle just to tested out and testing out the 3 different speeds, and it seems to be working great. One other word of caution: if you aren't paying close attention, your assistant might steal your camera. Now I'm going to connect the brake lines here. There is a forward and a rear brake on the MX500. And the function of these wires here is they don't actually have anything to do with the brake. The brakes just work whether or not you connect these wires. But they are an important safety feature, because what will happen is if you pull the brake and these wires here are connected to the controller, it'll send a signal to basically make the throttle not work at all. So it won't send any power to the motor. This is a good thing, because imagine somebody's ripping down on the throttle and suddenly they're in kind of a hairy situation, but they're not able to actually let go of the throttle. They're just kind of clutching on for dear life. If you can get your hand to pull that brake down, that means it's going to stop the motor from driving forward, which is a really, really important safety feature. Additionally, if the throttle were to fail and just constantly be on full throttle, I've seen that happen with a go-kart before, for example. Again, this brake wire here is going to be a lifesaver potentially. So turns out the plugs actually didn't match for the brakes, so I actually just went through and cut the plugs off for both the brake, and I cut off the brake plugs on the controller side. Again, I knew which ones were the brake because they were properly labeled, and if they weren't, I could have checked the manual. So stripped out all of the wires, and then just using shrink tubing joined the 4 different wires together, and I just kind of kept track on the controller side of which was which. But it didn't really matter, like forward versus rear brake. I just kind of wired everything up, and then I did end up testing them as well to make sure that when the brake is pulled down, the throttle no longer drives the motor. It's zip tie time. Don't neglect this part. You don't want to be having the wires fall out the sides and getting tangled in your your spokes and in the gears and everything. So zip tie everything down nicely, and then cut back the tags. At this point, I wanted to actually mount the key right here in what looks like a gas cap, but of course it isn't, on the seat here. So I just used a drill to drill a hole right there, a little bit smaller than the gauge of the key, so that I could kind of cut back the hole to get it to be approximately the right size, and then press the key in. I made a little bit of a mess of it, so I wish that I just kind of had a drill bit that was the right size, but I didn't, and didn't do a great job with this, but in the end it ended up working fine. And with everything good to go, it's time to put the seat back on. So screwed on 1 bolt in the front, and then the 2 bolts in the back, and gave the seat a little jiggle, and then walked away. And of course, can't forget to plug the key into the controller. And with one last demo, it is ready for a test drive. Now, it goes without saying that any rider should be cautious when starting this out and testing it out. Make sure that you're turning appropriately and testing the brakes. This guy has ridden an MX350 and an upgraded version as well, so he's a comfortable rider at this point. And he is off to the races. This was a super fun project, especially because the rider here was able to help out a bunch. And this full suspension on the MX500 is just awesome, and a huge step up from the MX350. I hope you found this guide helpful, and thanks for watching.